Let's see how it cold starts. And that's how an AED should work. Welcome back to Living with a Classic, and if you're new to my channel, I hope you stick around and consider subscribing. I put out new videos every week on some Jaguar and classic car related content. In today's video, we're going to summarize the rebuild of this 1975 XJ6, and we're going to see what it actually cost to get this car back on the road. So if you haven't been following along, this is my 1975 XJ6 that I bought in December of 2019 with a blown head gasket. Since about January 2020, I've been rebuilding this on my channel, just a home rebuild on a pretty tight budget. So I've had the head off, gone through all of that. Thankfully it wasn't warped. Did a resurface at home, reground all the valves at home and lapped them into place. Painted everything up. We can have a look actually under the hood. Painted everything up and just cleaned everything up, but everything was done with the home mechanic in mind on a budget at home. So you can see there's still a few small things missing. I'm missing a few parts over there I'm still waiting for, and the heat pipe over here. But other than that, it runs and drives very well. I've been using it now as a daily driver for 2 weeks since it's been back on the road, and it's been absolutely perfect and flawless. Starts first time every time, runs very well, and it's been an absolute joy to drive so far. Have a little bit of look inside. If you've seen the car before, you know that this is where the car needs some work. The interior is a little worn. It's a bit missing there. It's a bit of a split in the seat. It's a little worn over there. So we can open. The back seat's actually pretty good. That's what the back seat looks like. I do have a baby seat in this car because I'm using it as a daily driver right now. Take my daughter to daycare in this car. So it's being used as a real car at the moment. So this is stage one of getting this car back on the road. It's been a long project, and if you haven't been following along, I put a link to a playlist. I put every single video for this car in a playlist so you can watch from beginning to end to when I first get the car to the channel. We diagnose the head gasket failure, then start taking it apart, seeing actually why it failed, and then putting it all back together. So let's go on a quick drive over to my house, and we'll talk about my future plans for this car. And then when we get to my house, we're gonna get all the receipts out, or we can count out what it actually costs to get this car back on the road. So this is the first car that I didn't only buy for myself. I also bought it as a project for the channel for you guys to watch. The car came up at a pretty good time, at a pretty good price, and I felt like the head gasket was something I could fix myself at home, and I wanted to see if I could prove a theory of mine. You can fix up one of these cars at home for not that much money at all and get it back on the road pretty quickly. It might not be perfect, it's not going to be a show car, but it's a car that you can enjoy. Because I think, especially something like this, a big four-door car, it's a great car that you can enjoy if you have a family. Like, I have a 2-year-old daughter who now loves to ride along in this car. I'm taking her to daycare in it now for about a week and a half. And every single morning when she runs out to the car, she yells, "My car, my car." She absolutely loves it. She's been along when I wash it and clean it, because it's not a perfect car. It can be used. It doesn't really matter if it gets some scratch or something. I mean, of course it matters, but it's not a fully restored concourse example, but it's a nice, dependable, good driver that you can use on the weekends or you can use every day. It's just a nice car, and it didn't cost a fortune to get it back on the road. Also, it didn't take that long at all. I bought it during the winter, which is a great time, or the fall, a great time to get a project. I worked on it during the cold months of the year here. I live in Sweden, so there wasn't really good driving weather for these kind of cars. And now, when it's really nice and beautiful and sunny outside, it's all ready, it's back on the road, and it's running great. So before we have a look at all the receipts, I've saved all of them and go through all the cost. I kind of want to say that this is the final video in the series of getting this car back on the road. But that doesn't mean it's the final video on this car, because there's always going to be more work to do on it. But now it's back on the road, so I think the whole series of getting the XJ6 back on the road is completed, and I think it was very successful. I'm very happy with the results. I think it runs great. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to take it for a really long trip, a nice road trip or something. I think this car would really excel at a nice road trip. So you might be wondering what's going to happen next. Well, the most obvious thing is, well, two things. One of them is the interior. I haven't really decided yet what I'm going to do. I have tried to source several used interiors for this car. I was really close to buying two parts car actually, but it just didn't really work out at the time. Both of those have pretty nice interiors, but the rest was terrible. So we'll see. If I find a nice interior, I'm going to swap it over, or I might do a restoration of this interior on the channel. I think some of you guys really want to see that. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd rather see a restoration of interior I have on the channel. Of course, it will be just like everything on the channel, showing you how you can do it at home. The other thing I want to do is one of its fuel tanks, the right one, it leaks a little bit. Or I haven't checked it. The previous owner says it leaks. I haven't used it. I just ran on the left tank, or I'm just running on the left tank the whole time. Because it doesn't seem to be rusted inside, I've looked inside, it does look really clean, so I think it's just a small leak somewhere in a seam. I'm thinking about using a tank sealer. I really wanted to try one for a long time to see how they work. I think this is an excellent time to try one. So I think I'm going to buy some tank sealer and try it on this tank, take out that tank, and see if it works. If it works, it's something I definitely want to use on other cars, because some people say it works really well. So also, if any of you guys have used any tank sealers, let me know which ones you've used, and let me know in the comments down below if you recommend them, yes or no. So those are the two major things that's going to happen to this car. And then I do have one kind of half crazy idea. This car has the manual climate control, which means no AC. Heat works really well in this car. But if I'm going to continue to use it as a daily driver in the summer, I'm a little bit spoiled, and I think I want AC. So that's a crazy idea I have, to basically retrofit an original AC unit to this car, so that the whole heater box and everything is original, but then I want to use a more modern compressor, a modern condenser and all that, so it cools very well. So that's kind of a crazy idea I might want to do to this car if I decide to keep it. But right now, I do feel like keeping this car. But we're almost back in my house, so I'm gonna just quickly run into the house. We're gonna get all the receipts and sit down, and let's add up what it actually costs to get this car back on the road. So I'm back at my house now. Instead of just showing you guys a whole bunch of receipts, I've actually took me about an hour to go through all of it. I made some categories in the list on my phone. I've also converted everything into US dollars, because about a third of you guys watching, according to Google Analytics, which is the biggest country watching, is the US, so I thought that'd make most sense. And also, around the world, most people understand the value of a US dollar. Of course, I paid all of this in my local currency, which is Swedish kronor, so everything's been converted with today's conversion rate. I made 7 categories, so I'm going to go through them now, and then I'll give you the total at the end as well. So the first one being engine oil, oil filter, and some other fluids, which was power steering fluid and transmission fluid, just to top that up. That was $140, all of that. Then it's gaskets, freeze plugs, and head nuts. So I replaced those nuts on top of the cylinder head for nice chrome ones. New washers for all of that, and new copper washers for the cam covers. I kept the old nuts there because I could polish those up. I put in all new freeze plugs, and I got a gasket set for the top half of the engine. So that's the head gasket and everything on top of that. That was $120, all of that. Then I had to re-shim the valves, so I got some new valve shims. I think I could use about half of the old ones, so I had to buy about half of them. That was $45. Then cooling hose and thermostat, coolant, and hose clips. All that was $170. The biggest cost of that was actually those hoses are pretty expensive. Coolant is not that cheap either, And I decided to replace all the hose clips just to have new ones, and I decided to put some nice stainless ones. Those also cost a little bit more. Then I put another category for carbs. I didn't fully rebuild the carbs. They were in pretty good shape. I just replaced any of the gaskets in them. And the gaskets for these carbs are pretty cheap, so that was just $4 for those gaskets I needed. Then I replaced all the fuel hoses and all new hose clips for the fuel hoses as well. That was $35 for all of that. And then I have one more category, which I'll call cosmetics, because it's not really vital for the rebuild. But as you know, I decided to repaint the block. I cleaned up and polished a lot of parts, so that's different buffing materials. I also painted the cam covers. I painted the air filter boxes. I painted all of those things. So I spent about $70 on spray paint, on some sandpaper, polishing compounds, and paint for the engine block. So the grand total is $584. So that's really not a lot of money at all to get this car back on the road. Everything was done on a pretty tight budget on purpose. Not only because I wanted to prove that it could be done on a tight budget, also because I don't have that much spare cash. This is an extra car that I don't really need, that I bought just to do this as a fun thing for you guys. So of course it couldn't cost that much, because I mean, this is just a small little YouTube channel. I don't really have a big budget or anything. I'm just doing everything myself. So for me, this was still a pretty big investment in something that I just do in my free time. But now with this all back together, I'm extremely happy that I did it, even though it was a lot of work. And that's one thing I haven't counted at all. I haven't counted the hours. It's really hard for me to actually count hours in doing this kind of work, because I filmed everything that I did on this car. And I've read somewhere that when you film something, it could take anywhere from twice to maybe 3 times as long. And I agree with that. It does take a long time when you film everything that you do. But yeah, I spent probably almost all of my free time from January until just a few weeks ago on rebuilding this car. So yeah, there were many hours. I'll see if maybe I'll make an update in a future video where I'll try to figure out how many hours it is, but it's going to be really difficult to figure out. The one thing we haven't talked about is tools, and that's because I already had pretty much about 95% of the tools I needed to do this job. I only had to buy a couple of taps and a few small bottle jacks to get the head off. Otherwise, I had pretty much everything. And that's the thing, if you're working on cars, you already have the tools, or if you plan on working on more cars in the future, those tools are more of an investment. They're not just linked to that project, they're linked to future cars, because I mean, tools are not used once and then throw away. If you buy high quality tools, they'll last you a lifetime. You can use them on many different projects. So that's why I didn't count tools in that. However, if this is going to be your first project, then you do need to budget for some tools. I am going to do a video in the future. Many of you guys have asked for it, where I go through all the tools I use on the channel, so that will be in a future video. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. And until next time, I'm Adam, and this was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.